By treaty, he was paired with an alien clerk, and she walked in at the worst possible time, stepping into his quiet apartment just as his life was balancing on the fragile edge between collapse and routine. The door clicked open with diplomatic authority, cutting through the stillness like a scalpel tracing the first line of a long surgical incision. Her entrance felt less like a greeting and more like a verdict delivered by a universe that had grown impatient with his small attempts at normalcy. Her arrival wasn't dramatic in the way humans imagine alien encounters. No thunder, no glow, no trembling in the air, just a calm, precise intrusion that suggested she belonged there far more than he did. And in that quiet moment, before introductions or explanations, he already sensed something unsettling. Nothing in his life would stay the same after this. Evan Price lived in a fourth-floor apartment above a laundromat that hummed like an aging starship engine. The building was old enough that its walls creaked with temperature changes but new enough that management still insisted on charging premium rent for industrial loft charm. The air smelled faintly of detergent, warm dust, and the ghost of microwaved dinners. It was, as Evan had always insisted, perfectly adequate for a single human with simple ambitions. He sat cross-legged on the floor with a half-disassembled drone scattered across a towel, wires coiled like injured mechanical snakes. A cup of instant coffee cooled beside him. His laptop screen reflected the blue error message he'd been wrestling with for an hour. It had not been a good morning. He had spilled coffee, tripped over a power strip, and missed a work call. But it was about to get worse, though he didn't know that yet. He only realized something unusual was happening when the building's hallway lights flickered in a synchronized pattern. Not the inconsistent flutter of bad wiring. This was intentional. A signal. A protocol. A reminder that Earth had spent the last 3 years negotiating with the Kesseran Union, a civilization older and more administratively complex than most human religions combined. Every treaty came with obligations. Earth's obligation was something the news commentators had jokingly labeled the interstellar student exchange. Humans received a Kesseran liaison. Kesserans received a human. Mutual understanding, shared learning, cultural cohesion. That was the official aim. Unofficially, it was paperwork, lots of it, and the Kesserans loved paperwork more deeply than humans loved oxygen. Evan had assumed, prayed really, that the matching program would skip him. He worked in municipal engineering, not interstellar diplomacy. He paid taxes. He minded his own business. He was aggressively normal. Surely the universe would overlook him. It didn't. The corridor light blinked 3 times, assignment arrival notification. Evan froze, holding a screwdriver in midair. "Oh no," he whispered. "It's today." He scrambled to his feet, stumbling over the half-assembled drone. The living room was a battlefield of hobby tools, laundry in uncertain stages of cleanliness, take-out boxes, and a toppled plant that hadn't been watered since Tuesday. Or Monday. Maybe longer. He grabbed a laundry basket and swept everything he could reach into it: socks, cables, a screwdriver set, an empty mug. The basket overflowed instantly. He shoved it into his bedroom, shutting the door with his foot. The hallway lights dimmed. The building's automatic door mechanism unlocked with a deep metallic thump. Someone was entering. Evan barely had time to straighten his shirt before the door swung open with quiet authority. She stepped inside with all the self-possession of a diplomat who had never in her life entered a space she did not immediately command. Tall, poised, and impossibly composed. Her skin was a deep iridescent blue, not metallic but alive, shifting faintly with her movements like ripples beneath glass. Her eyes were a muted gold, no pupils, no whites, just spectral discs that looked as if they had been carved from still, ancient light. Her hair, if it was hair, fell like a cascade of woven ink, shimmering softly. She wore a uniform of silver threading across charcoal fabric, a design that implied bureaucracy rather than military formality. She carried a thin case in one hand and a crystalline slate in the other. She was beautiful in a way that didn't fit human categories. Not seductive. Not soft. But inevitable. She surveyed the apartment once. Only once. Yet Evan felt as if she mapped every molecule. I am Vela Sarin, administrative clerk of the Kesserin Union, she said, her voice calm and resonant, shaped by someone who had studied human speech patterns but refused to mimic them too precisely. Under Article 7, Section 12, Clause 3 of the Cultural Integration Mandate, I am assigned to you. Her tone implied that the assignment was a sacred duty, and also a mild inconvenience. Evan swallowed. Right. Welcome. Sorry about the mess. She tilted her head in a very non-human gesture, too smooth, too precise, and said nothing. Silence radiated off her like a quiet accusation. Kesserin clerks were famous for their observational skills. They could catalog a foreign environment in seconds and list every deviation from expected norms. They were also known for their arrogance, though politely framed as confidence in established procedures. Vela stepped further into the apartment, each footfall silent on the wood floor. Her posture was straight enough to make a ruler feel insecure. This environment is inefficient, she observed. Yeah, Evan said. That's one word for it. It lacks structural logic. That too. And it appears to lack designated workflow zones. That's also true. Vela's golden eyes narrowed slightly. Human living arrangements remain perplexing. Your species prioritizes comfort over functional order. This creates systemic inefficiencies and contributes to cognitive clutter. Evan almost laughed. She hadn't even been there 3 minutes, and she was already analyzing his clutter like it was a security threat. He cleared his throat. Is this going to be a problem? Vela didn't answer immediately. She paced the room once, calm, evaluating, and then spoke with clipped precision. My role is to observe without judgment. She paused. I will do my best. Evan wasn't sure if that was a reassurance or a warning. The species difference hung between them, not hostile, not tense, just undeniably present. She moved like gravity had a different agreement with her. Her breathing was slower. Her gaze sharper. Every action she took seemed planned 5 steps ahead. He was human. Messy, improvisational, always 2 minutes behind his own life. She was Kesserin. Ordered, structured, methodical to a fault. And apparently, they were stuck with each other. Vela took exactly 3 steps into the apartment before she set her crystalline slate on the nearest stable surface, Evan's cluttered coffee table, which had never been called stable by anyone except Evan. The slate unfolded like liquid metal, forming a thin triangular console that projected a soft, silver-tinted light across the room. Evan watched with mild awe and mild panic, because the device was now lighting up every dust particle in his living space like a tactical spotlight. Vela spoke without looking at him, hands gliding across the floating interface with deliberate precision. Before integration begins, human subject evaluation is required. We will now establish baseline metrics. Evan blinked. Subject? That is the treaty term. Well, it's a terrible one. That is the treaty's fault, not mine. She adjusted a glyph on her display, and the light shifted to a scanning hue, soft blue, then green, then a strange ultraviolet shimmer. You should remain still, she added. Your biological instability may interfere with readings. My what? She lifted her gaze, her golden eyes calm, factual. Your biology is extremely inefficient. Unoptimized bipedal structure, fragile skeleton, inconsistent thermal regulation, unpredictable metabolic swings, and a circulatory system that reacts to stress by attempting to abandon its duties. That's called adrenaline. It is called malfunction. A faint ripple of amusement spread through the device's projection, though Kesserin expressions were subtle enough to feel imagined rather than visible. Humans evolved under chaotic environmental pressures, she continued, and it shows. Wow, Evan said. Thank you for that glowing review. Vela nodded, clearly missing the sarcasm. Yes. And yet, despite all deficiencies, humans remain surprisingly durable in non-logical ways. She tapped her console. This contradiction is of interest. Many of my colleagues find it humorous. Humorous? Your existence defies statistical expectations. Somewhere behind her, a soft chime echoed. Vela reached without looking and summoned a hologram of 3 Kesseran figures, likely her colleagues, who emitted a delicate ripple in the air. It wasn't laughter as humans knew it, but it was unmistakably laughter. They find you endearing, Vela explained. Like a small, unstable pet. Great. Fantastic. She didn't seem to notice his tone as she continued. Kesseran physiology is superior in the majority of measurable categories. Stronger musculature. More efficient reaction processing. Fully regulated endocrine systems. We have no emotional surges that override logic. Hence our stability. Evan raised a brow. So you're saying my body is a dumpster fire, and yours is a well-oiled machine? That is an oversimplification, Vela said. She paused. Then added, but accurate. He rubbed his face. And the treaty thinks this pairing is a good idea? The treaty was written by diplomats. That explains everything. Her head tilted slightly. Kesseran confusion looked like someone had lightly nudged a statue off axis. You lack faith in the treaty? I lack faith in anything written by committees. That, for the first time, earned the faintest shimmer across her cheekbones. Kesseran amusement, elegant and quiet. Vela shifted the projection and displayed a rotating blueprint of a Kesseran training module, sleek angles, perfect symmetry, glowing pathways. It looked like something manufactured by a species that couldn't tolerate crooked picture frames. This, she said, is the standard integration assessment. All human partners must perform the initial tasks. The blueprint tab opened to show 3 disciplines: balance, predictive tracking, and cognitive sequencing. Evan let out a low whistle. That looks like someone combined parkour, violin sight reading, and defusing a bomb. Yes. Accuracy is essential. And you expect me to do that? You will attempt it. Another pause. The results will likely be informative. He narrowed his eyes. Why do I feel like you're preparing to file a very polite obituary? Kesseran assessment reporting is medically precise, not emotional. That doesn't make me feel better. She stepped closer to him, scanning him again. The light swept over him, revealing the faint outline of his humanness. Imperfect. Unbalanced. Messy. His eyes sharpened. Let me ask you something, Vela. Yes? Why did the Kesseran Union agree to these pairings in the first place? What's the real reason? Her hands paused. Barely. But enough for him to see it. Cultural cohesion, she said. He raised an eyebrow. And? Diplomatic transparency. He folded his arms. And? Vela's jaw tightened. A tiny motion, barely perceptible, but enough to betray discomfort. What else? He pressed. Her golden eyes flicked away, then returned. Human unpredictability is a strategic variable. Our leadership requires closer study. There it is, Evan said softly. You want to know what makes us tick. You do not tick, she corrected. You oscillate. That's not the compliment you think it is. Before she could answer, another ripple of light emerged from her device, a message from one of the Kesseran scientist casts. They murmured in their elegant telepathic patterns, the translation washing through the air like silk. The scientist said one thing that made Vela's brow lift. Your human appears more cognitively aware than projected. For the first time, Vela looked very slightly uncomfortable. Evan murmured. Sounds like someone underestimated us. She composed herself instantly. It was a preliminary assessment. And now? Revised. He let that sit in the air for a long, satisfying moment. Vela extended her hand toward him, not to touch, but to initiate something. The room shifted as her device projected a full holographic space around them. Evan found himself standing inside a simulated Kesseran training chamber. The walls were smooth obsidian, sleek and curved. Thin light trails pulsed like veins of a living machine. At the center was a platform lined with floating discs and shimmering orbs. Vela stepped beside him. This is the balance track sequence. Kesseran's completed in 7 strides. 7? he repeated. You have legs twice as efficient as mine. True. You're admitting that? It is obvious. She stepped onto the nearest disk. It didn't wobble. Not even slightly. Then she moved, smooth, fluid, weightless. 8 disks illuminated beneath her feet as she glided across, each one lighting in perfect sequence. She didn't look down. She didn't need to. Evan exhaled softly. That was impressive. It was standard. Another Kesserin projection appeared beside her, performing the same routine flawlessly. Then another. Then another. They look like they're dancing, Evan muttered. That is because we do not fall. Well, he said, cracking his neck lightly. Prepare to witness the miracle of human gravity. He stepped onto the first disk. It trembled. Sank a little. Then stabilized. The second disk wobbled more. The third one nearly dumped him entirely. He flailed once, caught himself, and heard Vela intake a surprised breath, small, sharp, almost alarmed. Kesserins did not gasp. Their physiology was too controlled. That was the first sign that something about him was unexpected. He continued forward, doing something that clearly wasn't standard technique. He shifted his weight like dodging puddles on a rainy sidewalk. He took sideways steps. Hesitated. Adjusted midair. Leapt where no Kesserin would leap. It was messy, improvised, uneven. But effective. Disc 9 lit beneath him. Then 10. Then 12. He landed on the final platform, panting, sweat prickling his skin, but upright. Vela stared. Her golden eyes widened, a soft ripple of disbelief crossing her expression. That, she said slowly, should not have worked. Welcome, Evans said between breaths, to humanity. Silence pulled in the chamber. The projections of Kesserin observers shimmered around them, quiet, stunned, collectively reassessing a species they thought they understood. Vela spoke again, voice lower, softer, almost reverent. You did not follow the prescribed method. Nope. You adapted without structure. Yep. And you succeeded. Evan grinned. Story of human history. She stared at him with something new, something that wasn't superiority, and wasn't annoyance. It was curiosity. Pure, sharp, scientific curiosity. And something else she didn't yet have a name for. Humans reveal the terrifying truth: all our fun is training. Vela stood motionless in the holographic chamber, still processing how a species with chaotic joint articulation and inconsistent balance chemistry had completed a sequence designed for bodies far more stable. You adapted mid-fall, she said quietly. Without calculated angles. Without predictive mapping. Without a stabilization algorithm. That's because I don't have any of those things, Evan replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. All I've got is a lifetime of trying not to eat pavement. She blinked. Eat? Fall. Face first. Onto concrete. The fact that this is a routine human risk is deeply concerning. He chuckled. To us, it's Tuesday. The floating training discs dimmed as the simulation idled. Vela moved closer, studying him like a mathematician staring at an equation that suddenly produced impossible results. Explain your technique. You really want the truth? I always want the truth. Okay, Evan said. That first part, where I almost fell? That was childhood playground survival. Playgrounds? She repeated cautiously. Yeah. Wet metal bars. Rotating platforms. Things spinning at speeds they shouldn't. You learn to adjust fast or you break something expensive. That sounds not recreational. Oh, it was definitely recreational. He grinned. You haven't lived until you've been flung off a merry-go-round at Mach 2 because your cousin pushed too hard. Vela pinched her brow ridge. Kesserins did not often display confusion, but when they did, it was elegant and catastrophic at the same time. Human recreation appears to involve intentional peril. Yep. And your youth developmental period encourages this? Absolutely. And it gets worse. Vela straightened. Worse? Teenage years, Evan said. Skateboards, rooftops, improvised ramps. Every human has at least one story that begins with "I bet I can make that jump" and ends at the emergency room. That is not culturally logical. Nope. And yet it increases survival capability. Precisely. She paced slowly, hands clasped behind her back with the posture of someone rewriting centuries-old assumptions in real time. What about the second part of the sequence? She asked. The lateral pivot before disc 8. That was not instinct. That was something trained. Sports, Evan said. Specify. Basketball. Soccer. Dodgeball. Actually, dodgeball is probably the closest thing you aliens should study. Dodgeball, she repeated flatly. Is this a form of weaponry? It's a children's game. She stared in utter disbelief as he continued. 6 to 20 humans in a room, throwing rubber balls at each other as hard as physically possible. Last one standing wins. She inhaled sharply. You train your children to evade projectiles? Well, when you say it like that, it sounds crazy. It is crazy. Okay, yes. But it works. Vela's golden eyes were now fully locked on him, focused, bright, captivated. Your adaptation techniques are not structured, she said. They are chaotic. Improvised. Indiscriminate. Exactly. Human training isn't training. It's accidents that we survive. And those accidents, she murmured, create adults capable of navigating unpredictable environments. He nodded. You wanted to know why I made it through your training sequence? That's why. He gestured vaguely. My entire life prepared me for things that shouldn't be survivable. Vela took a slow step toward him. This, she said quietly, is not something our scientists accounted for. Now you know. The air between them shifted. Not romantic, not dramatic, but scientific, tinged with something deeper. You are, she said softly, statistically impossible. I get that sometimes. For us, she continued, training is ritual. Structured. Perfected. Her gaze softened. For humans, training is simply living. And that, Evan said, is why you shouldn't underestimate us. She held his eyes for a long moment. I won't, she whispered. Weeks later, the station learns exactly why human chaos is terrifying. 3 weeks slipped by in a comfortable rhythm of cultural evaluations, shared meals, and increasingly complicated conversations between Evan and Vela. He trained through Kesseran cognitive puzzles. She stumbled through human humor. He taught her sarcasm. She taught him spatial mathematics. Everything felt steady. Until the night the alarms detonated like knives in the air. The lights in Evan's apartment flickered violently. The holographic walls rippled. A deep, metallic siren roared through the station, vibrating the floor under his feet. Vela froze mid-step, her eyes going razor-sharp. That is not a drill. A second alarm joined the first, shrill, urgent, impossible to ignore. What's happening? Evan asked. Containment breach. Graviton core malfunction. Her voice tightened. If it collapses. She didn't finish. The gravity under Evan's feet lurched sideways. A chair slammed into the wall. A stack of plates shot across the counter and exploded. Vela grabbed her crystalline slate and snapped it open. We must reach the emergency stabilizer, she said. Sector Delta. Lead the way. But she didn't move. Her eyes widened, truly widened, for the first time since he'd met her. The corridor, she whispered. It's disoriented. Evan poked his head out the apartment door and saw it instantly. Gravity in the hall wasn't sideways, it was spiraling. Objects tumbled end over end in a lazy cyclone. A Kesseran attendant floated past, limbs flailing, unable to anchor. Okay, Evan said. That's not ideal. Vela swallowed. We cannot navigate that. We lack rotational tolerance. You mean you get motion sick? We lose equilibrium entirely. Ah. Humans call that Tuesday at the carnival. She stared at him in disbelief. You can walk through that? Walk? No. Evan cracked his knuckles. But I can time it. Time what? He waited for the spiral to shift, then leapt out. The corridor pulled him upward, sideways, down, like the world had been scooped up and shaken. His stomach sloshed. His vision went fuzzy. But this was familiar. The sensation was too much like the tornado slide at the county fair. Or that one time Marcus dared him to sprint across a rotating barrel. Or the night he braved the spin cycle playground disc with a bad idea and a running start. He closed his eyes, trusted physics to be weird but consistent, and let his body correct. He found the wall. Used it as a pivot. Launched again. Vela clung to the doorway, watching in horrified fascination. Evan! That is dangerously unstable. So am I, he shouted back. He reached the fallen Kesserin attendant, hooked an arm under them, and hurled them toward the stable doorway. Vela caught them with telepathic stabilization fields. You improvised a rescue in a graviton spiral, she yelled. Pretty sure humans invented the graviton spiral. We just call it roller coasters. Roller. Later. Where's the stabilizer? She pointed down the corridor, where the spiral tightened like a hurricane eye. Evan nodded. Cool. Terrifying. Perfect. He pushed off again. This time the gravity flipped 3 times mid-flight. His body reacted before his mind did, knees bending, shoulder rolling, instinct taking over. A childhood full of accidental chaos became precision. A lifetime of stupid risks became control. Play became mastery. He reached the stabilizer panel. Pressed his palm to the emergency override. The spiral snapped. Gravity crashed downward in a wave. Objects slammed to the ground. Vela stumbled but caught herself. The alarms shifted from red to amber. A calm voice echoed. Containment restored. Station stabilized. Evan leaned against the wall, panting. Vela approached slowly, like she was approaching a wild animal that might perform another miracle at any moment. You should not have been able to do that, she whispered. He shrugged. Shouldn't have survived falling off my neighbor's garage either, but here we are. She stared at him, not analyzing this time, not assessing. Just seeing. Your species, she said softly, is terrifying. We try. And incredible. He grinned. We try at that too. The moment the galaxy updates its manuals because of one human. The station medical bay hummed with sterile white light and the soft resonant hum of Kesserin healing fields. Evan sat on the edge of a diagnostic table with an ice pack on his shoulder, while 3 Kesserin medics scanned him with elegant, shimmering instruments that probably cost more than his entire apartment complex. I'm fine, he insisted for the 7th time. You are absolutely not fine, Vela said, standing beside him with arms folded sharply. Your muscle fibers are stressed. Your tendons overextended. Your equilibrium systems are doing great, Evan said. I've been through worse. I survived sophomore year gym class. The medics exchanged nervous glances. Vela exhaled slowly. I still do not understand how you were able to maintain directional stability inside a graviton whirl. It's the same trick you use when a tilt-a-whirl operator decides you've offended him personally. She stared. A tilt-a-what? He waved a hand. Human carnival physics. Basically weaponized spinning. The nearest medic made a soft, horrified noise. A senior officer arrived, a Kesserin upper-tier strategist whose robes shimmered with high authority insignias. He surveyed the readings, then surveyed Evan. You caused the emergency stabilizer to respond manually, the officer said. Evan shrugged. Yeah. You reached it through a class 4 gravitational distortion. Yep. And you survived without neural damage. Uh-huh. The officer turned to Vela. Your assessment file indicated the human possessed moderate to low physical discipline. Vela did not look away from Evan. My assessment was incorrect, she said. Then, formally, I request approval to amend it. The officer lifted his brows. Amend to what? Vela stepped forward, her tone becoming the precise cadence of a professional admitting a seismic discovery. Humans possess adaptive survival patterns not measurable through structured training. Their instability is itself a stabilizing asset. Their reflexes appear chaotic but align with real-world unpredictability. They compensate for lack of symmetry through raw improvisation. Their judgment system is not logical, but is effective. The officer considered this. You are suggesting human unpredictability may serve tactical advantages? I am suggesting, Vela said carefully, that we have been teaching them the wrong way. Evan blinked. Whoa. Wait. Hold on. You want to update Kesserin training manuals because of me? No. She paused. Because of your species. But yes, your demonstration precipitated the conclusion. The senior officer approached Evan, hands clasped behind his back. Human Evan Reeves, he said with a formal bow of acknowledgement. The Kesserin Union formally recognizes your contribution to station safety. Evan scratched his head. I just did what anyone would have done. No, the officer said. Anyone would not. His gaze sharpened, evaluating Evan with something akin to respect. Your instinctive correction patterns and situational improvisation are unprecedented. Is that good or bad? Evan asked. Potentially civilization-saving, the officer replied. He turned to Vela. Agent Vela, you have permission to submit revisions to the integration standard. Vela inhaled sharply. That is a monumental procedural shift. Your human earned it. Evan looked between them. What exactly is the integration standard? Vela faced him, her expression softer than he'd ever seen. It is the foundational manual Kesserin academies use to teach interspecies cooperation. It is revised once every 50 years. And now, she said, I will update it to include human unpredictability protocols. You're putting humans in the manual? Yes. That's insane. It is accurate. He laughed, a sudden, warm, disbelieving sound. She continued, voice quiet but steady. Your actions prove that human strengths do not fit into any of our structures. They form their own. Another medic approached, carrying a crystalline tablet. Agent Vela, they said. The Council requests your full report immediately. Vela nodded, dismissed them, then returned her focus to Evan. I must write a detailed recommendation, she said. But before I do... Her eyes flicked over him, evaluating, yes, but also something gentler. Thank you? Evan blinked. For what? For proving that my species underestimated yours. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. And for reminding me what unpredictability feels like. He smirked. You're welcome? Yes, she said softly. I believe I am. A quiet HY strike, simple, powerful, unforgettable. Vela walked with Evan back to his apartment. The corridors had been stabilized, the emergency lights extinguished, and the strange spiraling gravity was now only a rumor traveling down the station's gossip channels at light speed. She stopped at his doorway. Your actions will be reviewed by the strategic board, she said. They will not understand at first. They rarely do. Evan shrugged. But they will learn. He leaned against the doorframe. So what now? More training? More tests? More observation, she said. And? Her golden eyes lifted to his, thoughtful, precise. And more conversation. I am curious. About humans? About you, she corrected. He felt a warmth rise under his ribs, unexpected, uninvited, but undeniably there. You know, he said lightly. You don't have to rewrite all your manuals in one day. No, she agreed. But I will begin with the most important correction. She touched her crystalline slate, opening a document labeled Kesserin Human Integration Standard, Revision Initiation. Evan tilted his head. What's the correction? Vela typed one sentence. Just one. Then she stepped aside so he could read it. Do not mistake human unpredictability for weakness. He exhaled through a slow, crooked smile. That's your new guideline? It is only the beginning, she said. Calm, confident, certain. But it needed to be written first. She closed the slate. You survived a gravitational collapse, she added. You stabilized a failing sector. You saved 3 Kesseran officers. And you did so without hesitation. He shrugged lightly. You'd have done the same. No, she said. I would have followed procedure. She paused, long enough for her next words to land with deliberate weight. You followed instinct. And instinct, he said, saved the station. She nodded once. It appears your species excels where rules fail. He smiled, quiet and sure. Yeah, he said. That's kind of our thing. Vela held his gaze, steady, thoughtful, a scientist meeting something that defied its category. Evan, she said softly, is this where humans deliver a closing remark? A closing remark? A final line of significance. A mic drop? Yes. That. Evan stepped back into his apartment, hands casually sliding into his pockets. His posture relaxed. His expression calm. He gave her a small, knowing smile. The kind that carried thousands of years of human troublemaking expertise. And he said in a simple, even tone, next time something breaks, try letting a human go first. Vela's eyes widened, just a shimmer. A response of recognition. And respect. And something deeper. She bowed her head. Noted. The doors slid shut between them, and for the first time since arriving on the station, Evan felt the world tilt in a good way. Quiet. Soft. Unstoppable. Humanity, once underestimated, had just rewritten the galaxy's most important rule.